Welcome to the Character Sheet, comicbook.com's official home for all things fantasy and tabletop. I am one of the hosts of this channel, Christian Hoffer, and today I am joined by a very special guest. If you've watched our channel, you know him already, Damien Haas from Smosh, but we're not here to talk about Smosh or Sword AF, which recently got announced for a second season.
Mhm.
Congratulations on
Thank
that.
you very much. Thank you.
We are here to talk about one of my favorite animes slash manga series, Delicious in Dungeon. Uh,
Thank you so
so,
much.
in case you didn't know, Damien is the English male lead of Delicious in Dungeon. And I'm going to butcher the name because I read, I do subtitles and I'm half deaf. But Laos, right? That's how you say it. Laos,
Laios, but yeah,
Laios. Okay, yeah. See, terrible. Christian Hoffer special.
that's
Fantasy name,
okay.
can't get it right.
Totally
Um,
fine.
yeah, yeah. So, my first question is how long ago did you find out that you're going to be doing this role? Were you familiar with Delicious in Dungeon before you got the role? And take it away.
Yeah, I was not familiar with the manga, and I found out very quickly that there was a huge fandom for it,
Hmm.
that was very excited for the show. I was just excited to do it, because it's such a cool ensemble story. Even just the audition that I did I was like, this looks like a really fun show. And on top of that, I've been voice acting for like 13 years, but I have not done as much anime as I would like, so this felt like a really big opportunity for just that alone. Um, the bulk of my excitement kicked in when I found out it would be a Studio Trigger animated show, which is to me a huge deal. To any anime fan, like even if you don't know the name, you know their work. So yeah, I'm just on top of the world. It's really great, and I'm very happy.
So how did you prepare for this role? When you found out that you got it, what did you do to prepare? Did you eat any monsters?
I'm already a very adventurous eater. I don't think there are too many things that I shy away from, because I at least want to know, like, that plant, I've never even heard of it before. Is it edible? What do you do with it? Like, that's I'm kind of just naturally curious in that way, at least when it comes to food. Um, but I will say, usually when it comes to things that I'm working on for voice acting, you don't usually get the luxury of knowing much about the project beforehand due to NDA purposes. It's very rare that an entire world of manga exists before you record for something. And so I decided to, out of respect for the fandom and how big this project is for me and a lot of people, I'm almost done with the manga, but I immediately like really wanted to jump in. So in terms of prep, that's not quite as fun as, I mean, it's fun. I love the work, but it's not quite as silly as eating a monster, but close. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be 100% honest as a comics person and like somebody who reads like dozens of manga series every single week. Delicious in Dungeon is one of the best manga series of the last like 10 years.
It's
It's
incredible.
it's a truly fantastic story if you haven't read it, which obviously you have. I'm talking, of course, to the viewers. You
The
should
the
read
co-
it.
the royal you, the
Yes.
yeah.
So not to for those who aren't super familiar with Delicious in Dungeon, can you give a brief like overview of the plot of the series?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is an adventure series that has to do with the idea of rescuing someone from a dungeon. However, there is a timeline tacked on at the very beginning of it, and they are like several party members down. So, one thing that they do to compensate for that is they decide that they are going to eat food that they find in the dungeon as opposed to going into town and raising money and preparing in all these ways, which is an unconventional thing to do in this world. Um, Pretty quickly, they run into someone who is able to cook things in a way that is a little bit more palatable, and some members of the party are more down for that than others. And so it is simultaneously an adventure show. It is very much a comedy. It has that cooking element where all the food looks actually incredible. Um, and it also has some very serious topics and very
Mhm.
dark topics, and deals with loss, and there's wonderful metaphors for that. And I can't say enough good things about it.
And, it obviously, since we're talking about this on the character sheet, it
Mhm.
really draws heavily from the tabletop RPG, Dungeons and Dragons type
Mhm.
experience. It's very, very heavily rooted in that. So as somebody who has, really, started to like dive into that world, see our previous interviews for more on that. Why do you think this series has like resonated so much with the D&D and RPG crowd? And has your recent experiences with Sword AF, kind of resonate? Did that add anything extra, to approaching the series?
I think regardless of genre, people like stories about interpersonal relationships. You don't know what it's like to be in a dungeon, I hope. But then also you do know what it's like to care for someone. There's probably someone in your life where you're like, I would do anything for them. I would throw myself in harm's way to know that they are okay. Um, and I think the story is so strongly built off of those things in a way that is very realistic and like very earned within the story
Hmm.
that at a base level is going to connect with people. And just add on top of that, the icing of D&D is only getting more and more popular, more and more mainstream, and so something set in that world is for a lot of people very new, but for other people very familiar in a comforting way. The characters are exciting and interesting, and they are flawed, and they are relatable in their flaws. I think there's just so much to grab onto here. um you root for these characters, you root for romances that are a little bit bubbled beneath the surface or very overt. It's I don't know, there's just so much to love you know
One of the things I really appreciate about the show is because it's half of it is it's a cooking show. It's a
hmm
cooking story. It uses it as a framing device. It really holds true to both the logic, like it has the show has an internal logic
hmm
that it really holds and follows, and yet still comes up with such creativity within that like set of rules. Like it always approaches like how would I eat this creature? How would I prepare a meal around this creature? And then when you touch upon the natural like extension of that, like, oh, this is an intelligent creature, this is an undead creature, this creature doesn't have
yeah
flesh, and it sticks with that, and it
hmm
weirdly it approaches those interpersonal relationships and the evolution of those interpersonal relationships and much that same logic. Like these characters, behave in a very approachable and logical manner, and you can see the conflicts like boiling to the surface and like the
yeah
tension there, and it's a fantastic story. I could gush about Delicious in Dungeon. Like,
let's no
uh,
I think that's a great way to put it. Like the characters all have a very strong point of view, and
mhm,
so the exposition is given to you through these relationships where someone's like, I don't agree with this, and someone's like, well, why? How is that different than what we've already been doing? And they're like, well, it just is. And someone's like, well, that's not good enough for me. And it's creating a logic of the world but making it realistic in the way that you know we have different rules in our world, but people might disagree on morality and ethics of things. you
mhm,
know eh, that's real, that's natural. um and what I think is very cool about Laios is, it's not overtly said in the manga or the show, but like he has a lot of traits that a lot of people would consider traits of someone who's neurodivergent.
mhm,
I myself am neurodivergent, and so I see so much of myself in the character in this way. And seeing the reaction online of people also connecting with him because of those things has been very very special, and I feel very honored to be trusted, portraying that, because I think that kind of representation where it's just a part of someone's character and not the story is more rare than it should be, and it really matters when you see it you know
it it's really interesting because I was gonna ask you about
Sure.
that. There was a specific scene in the 1st season, a
Yeah.
fight that, Laios has with Shuro,
Mhm.
and you know, one for me, it was that moment that it like really clicked. Oh, this character is neurodivergent. I never really thought about that when I
Yeah.
read this story, but seeing it, come to life, I'm just, oh god, yeah, this makes total sense. Um,
Yeah.
how did you what was it like voicing that scene? Like, how did you approach it? Did you because that scene went viral. It went
Mhm.
viral on Twitter and elsewhere, and a lot of it the conversation was around the depiction of a neurodivergent character, and people empathizing with what happened in that scene.
Yeah, I remember reading that scene in the manga, and it sat in my stomach like a bowling ball. Because that experience was so relatable. And I took it very seriously. And to be honest, every bit of recording for the show has been so much fun. We're laughing in the booth, but this was the only thing that I was really like kind of nervous to do, even beyond bigger scenes that dealt with seemingly bigger themes like death and loss. But I was like, I gotta get this scene right. Not just for everyone else, but for me too, because I'm like, I want to share like what this is like for me. And then seeing the reaction to it online of so many people saying like, oh my God, that's me. I've been there. I've done that. Like I've never seen this kind of thing portrayed before in this way. It was simultaneously like comforting but also deeply sad. Where
Hmm.
it's like, oh, so many of us feel this loneliness and this confusion, but we feel it together. And it's a small comfort, but at the very least, I just felt seen, and I was really glad that other people could feel that too. But his neurodivergence for me, like it was almost immediately apparent when I started reading the manga. Because I remember when I auditioned for it, I had done like two takes, and I was like, okay, well, those feel good. I feel like I'm good. And I stepped out of my like closet booth converted thing over here. I don't know why I'm pointing. You can't see it. It's there. I promise. Um, I stepped out and I was like, you know what? I feel like I can do one more take where I just throw it away. Like I don't do anything over the top. I don't do anything. I just want to like be myself and as low key as possible. I'm gonna do that. So I did. And to hear them tell it, that was the take that booked the role for me. And it was so funny realizing afterwards that the character is, even if it's not specifically canon, has a lot of traits of someone maybe with autism. Because I
Hmm.
was like, oh, of course. And it was funny because, I'm playing it very much as naturally as I can. And then as soon as it premiered, the first episode, people were like, I love how you're playing him autistic. And I was like, well, damn, I guess actually kind of, yeah, just by being my default. So, yes. Um, yeah. So,
No, I mean, it really helped bring that character like home for me because there are things that he does, which again makes sense. It tracks in his internal logic, but I always felt like I was missing something with how other characters reacted to him because
mm,
the story is primarily from his perspective, at least like the first half of it.
yeah.
As as the manga progresses, it branches out and we get other point of view characters. But because you follow him, you don't see that there's anything different about him. At least from my perspective, I'm just like this guy makes
Mhm,
total sense. Why are people treating him the way he does? But seeing that perspective, in the show and how you brought him to life, it's like this is why, and it it adds just like a poignant sadness to the story that's
mhm.
so fundamentally relatable for so many people. And you obviously knocked it out of the park as we're
Thank you
talking
very
about
much.
how this has added like an extra depth to an already fantastic story.
Thank you.
Um, Sorry, I don't have a question there. I just
No,
wanted to gush a bit about a fantastic performance that you did.
thank you, and I really do appreciate that, and I think, I was, sitting in an airport lounge when the episode had, like, premiered, and I, saw that the scene was going viral, and I decided to watch it back. Even just on Twitter, I saw the scene, and I teared up, like, in the lounge because I was just like, "Wow," like, you're sort of living it again, but it's interesting to hear you say that because, you do work in the realm of, like, nerddom and comic books and all that stuff. So, realistically, a lot of neurodivergent people sort of flock to those
Mhm.
kinds of hobbies, myself very much included. So it's interesting to me that are like, I'm not getting what the problem is this entire time until it's a very big issue that leads to blows where someone's like,
Yeah.
you are not getting this. And I think, that shows your, you know, tolerance is maybe a bit of a negative word, but your um, comfort
He
level around people who are neurodivergent, which is
Yeah,
just very interesting.
Laios is a person that I would hang out with.
Yeah.
That's and so it's I guess it's kind of fascinating because it really drives home like how a lot of people are treated, and that discomfort that comes around, like, like, why aren't you just treating him the way that he deserves? And like literally, that's what that entire scene is about. Again, I could gush about this all day. I do have some other questions I want to ask
Sure,
though.
of course.
Um, turning things to a much lighter topic.
Mhm.
Is there a particular meal that you want to try after watching the series?
Yes, I keeping things that have premiered in the show so far,
Mhm.
so I don't spoil anything for anyone. I would be down to try the Kelpie, um, because the Kelpie is, for anyone who doesn't know, it is a mythological water horse thing, spirit beast. Um, I have again, I'm very adventurous. When I was in Japan a couple times ago, I tried horse sashimi,
Mhm.
so raw horse, and people go, ah, horse. And I'm like, what? It's a taller cow. Again, very Laios coded of like, I don't know how this is different. It's a mammal. It has four hooves. Why is this different? And other people are like, no, not for me. So I love seafood, and knowing that horse was so good when I'd had it in Japan, that some kind of seafood horse combo, I kind of just want to see what that's like. Otherwise, probably the ghost sorbet.
Yes.
Uh, Something about eating a ghost just seems like it's kind of a power move.
Yeah,
Just
no, it is. It is. It's really funny that Kelpie scene. So I was watching that episode with my son, and
mhm.
like he noped out
Oh,
so hard with the Kelpie. He was just like,
really?
"Why are they eating the horse?" And I was like, "Oh, that is just a normal thing that some cultures do." And
Hmm.
he's like, and I'm like, "And it's not a horse. It's a Kelpie. It's a totally different thing. It's very
It's
fine to
pretty
eat."
horse shaped though.
Yeah, and he's just like,
It's
he's
it's
like,
more like a horse than most things.
He's like,
So
"It's a horse that swims and they're eating it." I'm
yeah.
"No, if you don't wanna watch the horse get eaten, your
Mm.
room is over there."
Go to your room if you're not going to eat the horse that your mother worked hard to prepare.
It's just like, but it was really interesting, and it's like that's like one of those moments where you're like, "Oh, like, that's an absolutely normal thing." Like, that's
Mm.
a very normal thing in Japanese culture, and for him to get that culture shock via the Kelpie, which,
Yeah.
is horse adjacent.
God, that's funny.
Um I'm trying to think what else. So I do have to ask.
Mhm.
Obviously we know that there's more episodes coming. I don't want you to spoil anything per
Sure.
se. But what can fans like look forward to as the show progresses?
Ooh, I think you can look forward to a show that continues to surprise you. One thing that's so special about this show is that, things aren't always solved easily, things aren't always solved gracefully. You do still get to have these feelings of good wins, but like there's so much depth to it. That even if you think you know where it's going to go, maybe it doesn't go that way exactly. There's just a lot of surprises around the corner, not in even a way that feels like out of left field, but just a lot of things that are you're getting a very new story that feels exciting to watch because you don't exactly know where it's going to go. Um, so yeah, and I think the cast cares so much
Mhm.
about these roles. You know, every episode we've got, you can tell everybody really cares. So, hopefully you feel that.
I mean, I do. Um, for our last question, instead of me asking you a question,
Mhm.
Producer Pete, is going to hop on because he's got a fantastic question he wants to ask you.
Ooh,
Pete, of course, is a fantastic, fan of the show, of Delicious and Dungeon, and he's got a deep dive question for you. So,
cool.
Yeah, mine is pretty simple. We've seen a lot about how Marcel is kind of this uh, academic genius, the
Mhm.
the pride of the Mage Academy, and she also knows what Kensuke is. She knows he's an armor mollusk. She's seen him, at this point, I think they've all seen him as part of the sword.
Yeah.
Why has she never pulled Laios aside and been like, you could probably just move him to any other piece of metal armor you have so that he doesn't run away with your sword when he's scared? You could still get all
um,
the benefits, and he wouldn't literally run away with your sword.
you know what? That is a very interesting question because I do think it brings up, especially at this point in the show, you talked about the Kelpie, Christian, and there's that aspect of Laios very strongly saying, like, you can't trust a monster. They're monsters. You might want to utilize them somehow, but the best way is like food or materials. You can't do this. And so Kensuke brings up an interesting point because, you know, he even acknowledges his own hypocrisy there, where he's like, yeah, you know, I still believe that, but like the sword kind of rattles when there's danger, and that's a little bit like Sting, you know, very Sting coded, not the singer. And well, Sting does that too. But
Every breath he takes.
every breath you take, and he'll be watching out for you, like a desert rose. He I think Marcel probably sees the utility, and I think there is bigger fish to fry in a way. But I'll also say that, you know, Laios's armor is armor, whereas these you know, living armor mollusks, it's not exactly specified how, but I'm assuming like other mollusks, they sort of make their own kind of carapace situation or their shell, and it just takes the form of armor. So I would imagine there's a hollowed out aspect, whereas, you know, in his armor there would not be. And also, you know, when Laios is having a conversation with Fallon, there is that aspect of, you know, she's like, wait, there's things in there, and he's like, yeah, do you want to eat it? Like immediately to make his sister happy.
That's
He was
true.
just like, oh yeah, do you want, I will do this in a second for you, you know. So goes in a full big brother mode. So that's a very interesting question, and I think it's yet to be seen exactly how or why they have sort of a tolerance for that.
Well, Delicious in Dungeon, obviously, fantastic fantasy show. If you have an itch for good fantasy, Delicious in Dungeon, I cannot recommend it enough. You know, we should probably mention where the show is found. Obviously, it's on Netflix, right?
Delicious in Dungeon is now streaming only on Netflix, so please check it out. Also, one last thing you might appreciate, I got my Kensuke tattoo.
Oh my god!
Wow!
You can see the little eyes there as well. There's like motifs in the sword for people who have seen the manga, but I won't spoil anything for the show watchers. But yeah, I'm running out of space on my resume arm, and so I'm gonna have to be very picky of what gets this last spot. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to talking with you about that last spot here sometime down the road.
Thank you very
Anyway,
much, my friend.
Damien, always a pleasure to have you on the show. We very much appreciate it. So thank you very much.
The pleasure is mine. Thanks, y'all.
And also like and subscribe, do the usual YouTube things. And until next time.
Goodbye, Damien!